Hey. Welcome to Ask a Brother podcast. I'm your host, Jeff St. James, and excited about another new episode that I've been kind of cooking and thinking about for the last couple of weeks for sure. I actually had some other episodes in mind, but this one seemed pretty, pertinent and important. And I think it was just an appropriate time for us to focus on this particular topic. With that said, I want to start off by shouting out our 24,413 subscribers that have joined this channel, joined this community. Shout out to y'all. All right, y'all. And, just appreciate all of you that's been joining this wave of intellectual curiosity, learning, growing, finding out how we can be better as men when it comes to how we interact with women, and how as women we can be better when it comes to interacting with men. It's not about treating each other necessarily as children as much as it is about trying to recognize each other's differences, strengths, and potential weaknesses, and how we can make accommodations for those that are worth it. So obviously things are kind of moving very fast, and I want to get through a couple quick announcements and then we're going to jump into this particular topic. So for starters, this month we will be opening up our store very, very soon. Once it's up and live, I will definitely announce it and probably make a post as well to let you all know about different merchandise and memorabilia that we think will be cool things that you all may want to add, especially with the fall and winter kind of coming up. Shout out to our members. Our membership is starting to grow quite a bit, and pretty soon in September, we're going to have some members only content, members only lives, and opportunity for members only call-ins. So stay tuned, members. And I'll be giving you all some instructions pretty soon in terms of how to be able to get access to Skip the Line when it comes to being able to do call-ins when we start these call-in shows this month. There is something that I'm thinking about in terms of an additional tier for membership where I have to figure out the math and see how it would work, but thinking of doing bi-monthly group consultations for both men's groups and women's groups twice a month, I'm thinking, and coming up with a fair and reasonable price that I think people can afford. And then also for those who can't afford the regular one-on-one consultations, this may be a cool thing that you may be interested in. So stay tuned for that. I'll definitely be announcing that as well. If you love the content that's been coming out from this channel and you have not donated yet, always going to request and ask that you do. The one thing that I've asked for those who are not members is that if you like any of these episodes, these original content episodes or these live streams that have come out, if you like them, feel free to feel like you can donate whatever it is that you can. I'm always asking people for a minimum of $2. I think that's the minimum amount. But if you want to do more, I'll definitely be grateful. And as I say every time, because the goal is for me to be able to become more and more independent and be able to do this more regularly and full time. Right now, I'm getting out about 2 to 3 videos a week. I would love to be able to get that up to every day or at minimum 5 days a week. If I can afford to do that in the very near or distant future, I would greatly appreciate it. And your help is not forgotten for sure. So last but not least, episode 6, how to stop debating with, or arguing with women. 16,000 people saw that since I last checked. So shout out to y'all because that let me know that a lot of these original content episodes that I tend to think about and reflect on for a while, it's cool. It's really nice to see people seeing the benefits of kind of just listening all the way through, taking it for what it's worth, not trying to turn it into something that it's not. It's unfortunate for the people who watch something like that and I spend about 30, 40 minutes going into detail about the specific type of woman that you do want to pour grace and patience with and the type of woman you don't. And then watching it and being like, oh, this is too much. Yeah, you're right. For those who don't want to get along with women, I think it is too much. For those who do, they would try to be much more selective with which types of women they're going to try these strategies and techniques with the hopes that she would have already shown you traits of being able to grow, being able to listen, being able to reflect, and also take accountability and apologize. If you see these things, that's probably a woman worth pouring into if she's not hitting 100% across the board, which means you aren't either. So, obviously some people would take it for what it is, but overwhelmingly it was such a positive reaction and response, and I'm grateful. So thank y'all for really supporting this type of content because I'm really trying my best to walk that line of trying to every so often focus on men and then every so often focus on women, and with the hopes of us just becoming better people. And then also last week, along with the episode 6 of how to not debate with women. I also did an interview with Jazz Noel. Obviously, she's quite known in the podcasting panel space, especially as it relates to discussions about gender differences between men and women. And Jazz is obviously very passionate about advocating on the behalf of women and Black women specifically. And it was cool. It was a really cool, interesting conversation. And I just hope that I planted seeds that she can kind of take with her as she decides if she wants to continue to build her own brand. And I'll be very interested in looking from afar to see how she does. Last but not least, this Saturday, I have to do my first in-studio radio show interview in Philly. September 13th, 8:30 p.m. at the We Talk Weekly local Philly radio. So feel free to I think I shared a post recently on YouTube about it. Feel free to check them out. I think I also shared it on my stories on Instagram. Follow their page, follow their YouTube. When these videos go up, if y'all could, please show them some love. We'll greatly, greatly appreciate it, and kind of let them know that, the episode or the interview that you're all going to hopefully tune in for is what kind of brought you in. It'd be nice to see, that goes well. And then hopefully I can do many, many, many more radio appearances. So, we'll see how that goes. That's not really something I'm used to doing quite often, but I have done a little bit on the radio before, just never an interview. So today's topic, there's been quite a bit trending as it relates to influencers, especially female influencers. And I started to think about just the nature of what's happening in a lot of industries in our country. In the medical field, for instance, it's really, really taken a major hit since the pandemic in terms of the overall pandemic response. Institutions outside of the U.S. that has so much say on what public policy and our health outcomes and many of the things and mandates that were kind of put on us as Americans. And it's really, really exposed a lot of the for-profit components that are really impacting our healthcare and healthcare outcomes. And RFK seems to have a significant role to play in that. Also disturbed by the trends of Hollywood and celebrity life and major, big people who are now being exposed of wrecking the lives of countless people because of power, because of influence, because of just being connected to such powerful people and music labels and having really big companies backing them, and people getting away with some of the most vicious, disgusting things in terms of how they're treating other and potentially even vulnerable people at times. And then also, thinking about the mental health field and how it's really started to take a significant hit and damage in terms of overall credibility, especially with today's topic as it relates to highly influential people or influencers who are on talk shows, all over podcasts and social media, and really messing up the helping field. So today's topic is titled, for episode 7, The Truth About Single Female Influencers. Now, to be granted, this doesn't mean that they're always single, but either their lifestyle or their words or the things in which they're preaching often pushes that particular viewpoint, what I would say potentially to the extreme. So I have 2 goals today. Number 1, I want to identify ways to find and see clearly individuals who are grifters, especially female grifters in the areas of dating, sex, and relationships, as well as identifying potential female influencing pawns who are being used for a specific political agenda of some kind. So I have 10 ways to identify these grifters and pawns that have a significant sway and influence over our cultural norms, and as it relates to especially social media. So rather than kind of hold you all up, I'm going to jump into these things, get through them as quickly as possible. And as I do additional things, both in the next week or so, my hope is that I'm really going to lean in and push you all and force you all to start to be a little bit more critical of the types of people that you're giving hours and hours of your time, attention, focus, and potentially belief to and into, in hopes that we can just be a little bit smarter and much more careful about what it is and who it is that we're allowing to influence us. So, number 10, very obvious. This is one of the easiest ways to spot a grifter or influence grifter or a, corporate pawn. Super easy way. Their overt use of pretty privilege and selling their sexuality. In the helping field, especially, where they're supposed to be professional to some degree and really looking at things from a very nuanced and clinical perspective, the last thing most working professionals would like to be is to get in the way and be a distraction for what it is that they're supposed to be focused on, which is actually genuinely helping people. So again, one of the easiest ways when someone is talking to a crowd and they're marketing certain things, are they going out of their way to push and use their overt pretty privilege and selling their sexuality, even if it's not directly? Look at what they're wearing. Look at what they're presenting. How many of those things are they presenting? And is the way in which they're presenting themselves, is the way in which they're dressing, is the way in which they are carrying themselves in this moment a reflection of what it is they're claiming to represent? Are they trying to sell you a particular product, or are they trying to attract you via the sexual presentation first, with hopes that you'll then buy into supporting them in the other endeavors? Are they trying to lure you in by truth, or are they trying to lure you in by your eyes? What it is that you're, potentially seeing. Number 9, positions of societal significance will always attract individuals that score high in narcissistic behaviors. Additionally, they will display dark triad traits, which includes narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. From the narcissistic components, many of the very, very common things that you'll observe in individuals that function like this, the grifters, the pawns, is they'll be very callous. They'll lack empathy, guilt, remorse, and even criminal behavior. They'll even display criminal behavior. And the reason why this one is such an easy one to discern is, are the messages and things that they're pushing and promoting harmful? Are they harmful? And if they're still willing to do it anyway, lack of guilt, lack of empathy. And just to clarify, what I just mentioned was actually about psychopathy in terms of the callousness, the lack of empathy, the guilt, the lack of remorse, and the potentially criminal-like behavior. From a psychopathy perspective, yeah, it's especially when they're pushing things that are very bad, toxic, and if most people did what it is that they're offering or pushing or promoting, would things be better, worse, or at best stay the same, which is not good culturally and societally. Narcissism, thoughts of grandeur, the constant need for admiration, profound sense of entitlement. And you'll typically see this most when things don't line up in the way in which they want, especially when people call them to task for things that they misspoke on, were inaccurate about, and you'll start to see this visceral reaction, and you'll pick up on it. You'll pick up on it where they just will start to act as if they are substantially better than the people around them and most people around them. And you'll sense the grandiosity in many of the prescriptions that they'll make in the advice that they give when they're constantly talking about the type of sex or group or individuals who's quote unquote not good enough for them. And it's one thing to talk through a lens of things that people need to grow into or grow within or improve on financially with their weight. It's another thing to kind of describe it in such a way where it's like, yeah, 80% of people in said group aren't good enough for me. Be very careful and mindful of individuals who speak in those large, often dismissive, generally dismissive ways of approaching. Like, where's the nuance when they're talking about men? Where's the nuance when they're talking about single mothers? So just be mindful that the narcissism is going to be clear. It's going to be clear. The psychopathy is going to be evident. But then the Machiavellianism, their actions will be marked by almost like a manipulative approach that involves deception and exploitation of others. So remember what I said earlier about how when they are pushing something that's harmful, even when they themselves aren't even doing it, living it, trying to. In fact, they may be doing the exact opposite of what it is that they're pushing and promoting. They will still do it at your exploitation, because at the end, they get the likes, they get the clicks, they get the attention, they get the engagement, and they get the cash. So be very mindful that, what kind of like positions in our society would people like this thrive in? Motivational speakers, just charismatic leaders, especially religious ones, podcasters, influencers, celebrities, political figures. You get the hint. Even with what I'm doing now, I have to be very mindful and constantly monitoring my own ego. About 60 days ago, 4,000 of you didn't know I existed. Now, 60 days later, you do. And I can see what can happen to people where they get addicted to certain things, the views, the trending, people knowing you, people recognizing you on the street. Like, yeah, it's a very, very toxic and inviting thing that you can definitely get lost in. But those who have those traits, it's no wonder they do so well. The very, very things that are potentially extremely destructive in their personal life to some extent can be rewarded, especially those types of behaviors can be rewarded when they're operating in the public realm where the overwhelming majority of people will not truly know them for them. It's who they display and how they present themselves and what they put out there in hopes to garner all that attention and praise and adoration. Number 8, there is a major disconnect between the life and relationships they are promoting that are the most ideal and preferred versus the life and relationships that they have or have ever had. Now, I have a question for y'all. If most people were to try to mimic their own lives to the lives of those that are influencing the masses, especially in regards to dating and relationship and life coaching, would the human race be moving towards flourishing or towards extinction? Would we be moving towards more relational peace between men and women? Or would we be moving more towards like relational chaos? Would their lives just continue to reflect the volatile trash dating market everyone is complaining about? Would men and women's relationships be better? If you really, really slow down and looked at the actual lives of the people that you're allowing to influence you, many of them in their lives and the way that they choose to move, how they move and choose to treat people, and even their lives romantically, if you were to extrapolate or project that out onto the rest of society, if most women moved and acted how these women were moving, would the human race and society as a whole be better or worse? If the answer is worse, why are you still subscribed to them? Why are you still paying towards their monthly Patreon? Why do you still have them up on your feed? If you literally did what it is they're doing, live how they're living right now, I'm not talking about 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, we're talking about right now with the outcomes that they do or don't have. If you just try to do exactly how they move, would society and the human race be better off or worse? Number 7, lacking contextual responses to answers and recommendations for people's lives. You'll always be able to identify these types of grifters and pawns because you'll pretty easily able to see the answer to this question. Do they lie to women when giving advice about what it is that she's doing or not doing in regards to her lack of success with men? Are they lying to women by omitting the topics of weight, hair standards, and overall image as if men don't care about those things? Think about what I just said. Is the woman who's giving another woman advice and can see her live at the ticket show where she walks up to the microphone, or clearly she can see her virtually, if she can see what her issues are, as can the men around her, and she chooses to tell her things that omits or ignores the things that are very clearly going to negatively impact her ability to be much more successful when it comes to men, knowing these are things that men may care about, they are leaving out contextual responses that they know, if they were honest about, would actually help her, but would actually turn the demographic she's trying to pander to be much more adversarial towards them. And they want to keep everybody that they're marketing and pandering towards to continue to love them. So they will sell you something that they know won't fill you and convince you that it's a full meal. Do they omit the ways in which pretty privilege, weight, body shape, attitude, you name it, how all of these things in varying degrees can allow you to have certain opportunities, can even allow you to get away with potentially bad behavior? Or do they just have this thing where they just say, just do what I do, as if there's no clear distinction between a famous or well-known influencer that's considered beautiful by most people's standards and doesn't look like most of the women who's reaching out and asking her for help and support? Do they tell women the truth they don't want to hear? Do they tell men the truth that they don't want to hear? Because if the answer is no to either of those questions, then that means that they are just pandering to one side. And chances are, if they're pandering to one side, that's the side they're not telling them anything, no constructive feedback. Not really pushing them, their target audience, to actually grow as human beings. It's easier to sell you on the pipe dream as men that everything that's wrong in your life is not because of you or because of your actions or inactions or things that you know that you're lacking on, slacking on, lazy with. It's much easier to market and sell to you and manipulate you into believing all that's wrong in your life and all that's wrong in culture and society is women, and that there's nothing wrong that you need to do, improve, or adapt to. It's just the women. You're perfectly fine. That's what it's like for many of these guys who are watching and listening to these female influencers who are pandering to men. Or we could flip it. What about those instances where their audience is primarily women? Their audience is primarily women. They are just constantly saying that men ain't this and men ain't that, and men are the reason for why everything's broken in society and culture, and everything that's wrong in relationships is a result of the patriarchy. It's a very tempting marketing tool, knowing that women are going to pay, knowing they're going to show up, knowing they're going to engage if you tell women what they want to hear. That was number 7. Number 6, hiding and having shady credential backgrounds. Rather than isolating and targeting one specific individual, I'd rather do a test trial run with myself. And my hopes is that after you see what it is that I'm going to share about my own background briefly, you'll understand why it is that me and those of us who are actually working professionals legitimately are pissed about what's happening to the mental health, helping, relationship advice related field, so to speak. When I was doing my master's thesis, it was actually on a men's support group on addressing maladaptive sexual behaviors that leads to shame. At one point, I was selected by the agency I was representing to sit at a panel discussion titled the Philly State of Emergency, Black Males and the Crisis of Violence, with local city councilmen, heads of churches, heads of outpatient programs, and a radio station as well. I also sat in and participated in a mental health crisis panel for a Black community panel sponsored by the NAACP from Monroe County. I was a part of a cultural competence task force to promote cultural and contextual adaptations to an evidence-based practice involving trauma patients and teaching annually these training on the specific subject of racial and cultural salience within the therapeutic environment. And there's been more doubts and higher scrutiny towards someone like me in regards to whether or not I'm supposedly allowed to speak on masculinity, men's issues, relationship challenges, trauma. There's been more doubt and higher scrutiny for me than many of these people who can go years and have had to prove nothing. Many of them just had to put a D and an R and a dot before their name. And many of you ran up like foot soldiers to support and defend people whose credentials may have absolutely nothing related to the topics that I just listed. All of those things I just listed are things that you can easily verify. And if you were a qualified enough person who I thought I would need to, really engage and respond with about these things, I probably would spend the time to actually produce all of these things if I felt maybe you had the platform or influence to justify having to show all of these things to you. But the point is they're there and they exist and they're related to what it is that I'm most passionate about. And yet, if people don't agree with me, that experience and those credentials go out the window. But if they agree or like their favorite influencer, they don't need those things and they may not even need the credential. Make sure that you're not one of those individuals that's falling victim to these types of things. Number 5, a lack of nuance, detailed, and disconnected conclusions of male and female psychology and female biology as well. For those who have already picked up on my theoretical approach as it relates to not just psychology, but just in general, I use and do what's called integral theory. Be sure to look it up. And these individuals that I'm listing don't use that. They don't have it. And they have a general weakness of blank slate theory, which explains the disconnect between them not understanding the nuanced differences that often happens between men and women, and their lack of recognition that all advice isn't good advice to all people at all times. Obviously, a woman who is older or substantially overweight or has multiple children is going to have a much tougher time getting access to the pool of men that she may want versus the woman who's in shape, doesn't have children, and is younger. Very basic things. And they'll talk to the man or woman in front of them in such a way where they'll always hold up one sex as the ideal, the standard, the prize, and the other sex as the standard who needs to fight to be able to get access to said prize. One side is broken, and one side's good to go. So they lack nuance, they lack detail, they have disconnected conclusions when it comes to being able to integrate male and female psychology, especially their differences, and seeing how they can actually fit in often seamlessly when positioned appropriately and correctly. But when they lack those things, they'll usually just pick a side, whichever side that they like the most, and they'll preach that the other side just needs to act like the side that they like and most identify with or rock with. Number 4, exorbitant fees. Unreasonably high, excessive, and normally might even damn near be criminal if it was regulated and it required higher or above average credentialing, which they don't have. The influencing space on social media is functionally and is an unregulated space, more or less, outside of like making certain remarks that can get you deplatformed. Most people can kind of market and present themselves with little to no background to justify why it is that people should actually listen to them or listen to their feedback. One of the ways when you can really, really tell whether or not they're more of a grifter is in this area. Look at their cost for private sessions, individual courses, versus events and sessions and courses that are being charged by people who are considered qualified actual experts in the related field. Think about it. If world-renowned psychologists, one-on-one sessions cost this, and an influencer who has no clinical background, no license ever, no master's or doctoral degree. Now, I'm, believe it or not necessarily a staunch person on credentialism, where it's like, if you don't have a degree, you're an idiot or you can't have opinions. I'm not one of those people. What I am saying is when you market yourself as if you are one of those people and you're not, and when those of us went to school and those of us who did our practicum hours, our internship hours, our clinical hours, we passed the exams. We're keeping up with the board standards. We're spending time of taking trainings on an annual basis to stay on top of our field and knowledge as the data we're being presented is shown as to what's working and what's not working and how to become better practitioners, from CRMPs to MDs to psychiatrists to psychologists to licensed social workers and therapists, and you did 2 weeks of life coaching, and you can market yourself as a doctor and then charge 5 times what the people who are actually the experts are willing and ethically willing to charge. Please make sure that y'all are paying attention to this type of stuff. Almost finished. Number 3, extremely immature reactions and responses when questioned, challenged, and critiqued. I'm not looking for perfection in human behavior. It includes myself, which is why I also opened up my channel the way that I did, talking about a lot of my flaws and shortcomings and mistakes in past relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But the lack of experiential understanding of concepts, strategies, as well as an educational understanding about relationships and intersexual dynamics, the role or need for social hierarchies, the differences in mating strategies, as well as the power dynamics expressed in both sexes, will typically result when people who know those things ask those questions. Whether it's about credentials or the things I just listed, they will have a very visceral and a very, very immature reaction that doesn't seem in keeping with someone who's been promoting and so-called practicing or attempting to practice the very things that they're so-called promoting. Most professionals are used to answering questions. Most professionals are used to having to deal with people who have high doubt, people who aren't sure about therapy, people, who aren't sure if therapy is going to be right for them. We're used to working with people who don't believe what we're offering can work. That's a given. We're used to everybody not wanting to do therapy. That's a given. Many of us are used to doing couples therapy where one side is more interested in the other. We're used to that. The screaming, the disrespect, the vulgar voice messages, the stalking people because people don't believe in your background or believe that you're that good, or they disagree with your stance or viewpoint on something. Yeah, extremely, extremely immature behaviors that are not a one-off, by the way, not like they had a moment. This is typically a general track record, and you'll see it when they are questioned and challenged. Hey, you've been giving everybody all this feedback about their marriages and their relationships, but you've never been in a relationship. Hold on. You've never been in a long-term successful relationship. You've never been married. You're right, famous, really well-off, beautiful influencer. You were proposed to 3 times. That's what makes you qualified with no degree background, no clinical background to tell us about what life is like as a wife. Interesting. And just to clarify, because I've heard this mentioned quite a few times, especially from these female influencers, so to speak, bragging about proposals and being offered rings that you didn't want and didn't want to keep is like bragging about job offers that you didn't take. No matter how great the job offer was, it couldn't have been that great if you didn't want it. No matter how great the job offer was, you still didn't get the experience that comes from accepting the job and actually doing the work. So counting the amount of engagement rings you were offered or initially accepted while never actually showing up and actually putting the work in to build and accrue your experience. I'm not saying you're disqualified from giving opinions because obviously there's a market. I'm just suggesting that those of you who are part of the audience, let's try to raise the bar again, raise the bar in terms of those it is that we're following, supporting, and giving our time, energy, and resources to so carelessly. Number 2, fortune cookie, astrology, pop psychology. They have a fortune cookie level, astrology, pop psychology level understanding of human behavior and human behavior and understanding. So they aren't taking complex topics and making it easier for everyone to understand. What they're actually doing is they're taking very simple talking points and adding a flair to it to make it sound deeper than it actually really is. If their vocabulary starts and stops with vibrations and high functioning, Pisces versus Cancers, talking points, there is no actual clinical depth. What they're telling you is things you could have pulled out of a fortune cookie. It's something that if you slow down and actually listen to what they said and not just how it sounded, realize that most of you, if you were as good or eloquent of a speaker, as charismatic, and looked quite like they did, probably could do something very similar and say something very similar. There is a lack of clinical depth. It almost sounds like everything that they're saying is sound bites. And number one, they will struggle with long-form discussion in the presence of qualified professionals in various domains and will curate their entire public persona around avoiding them. They avoid public intellectuals and extremely qualified professionals in the very domains that they're marketing themselves in and for, and they will avoid them like the plague. There is a reason that the doctor behind this person's name won't mean anything when they're sharing the stage or platform with this person who may or may not have a doctor behind their name. They'll stick to their wheelhouse of top 2, 3, 4 things that everybody talks about and everybody can give an opinion on. But when it's time to go into those deep waters to discuss the concerns of the direction of the DSM, to discuss the overdiagnosis of ADHD for boys in our public education system, when talking about the feminization of the therapeutic environment, when talking about the evidence-based approaches that weren't going far enough to acknowledge the nuanced differences, the cultural differences between males and females that grow up in a particular society, when they can't go there, the reason is because they didn't deserve to be on the stage in the first place. They will struggle with long-form discussion when in the presence of extremely qualified professionals and experts in the very domains that they are marketing to you that they are the expert in. And again, they will, if you think about it and look at all the people that were brought into their platforms and all the people that's on stage with them and all the people that they're interacting with, it almost never are people who clearly know way more than them in the very topic that they're talking. My greatest concern for everyone is relational failure or trauma responses that can lead to elevated standards and walls going up and extra requirements and being guarded and expectations being both dangerous and unrealistic for most people that are listening to this stuff. My concern is that there is a market for people to exploit those who are in that place of having come out of a failed relationship, not being happy with the dating market, going through some significant trauma, and convincing a generation of women to wait and pray and sit patiently for an archetype of a man that won't be there for them 10 years from now because of false promises, because of false standards, because false ideology, convincing them that they just got to wait for Santa Claus to come and deliver the gift of this perfect man who will accept them as they are, where they don't have to improve or change anything about themselves, convincing a generation of women to do this with little to no push for them to be more introspective and to grow and to challenge many of the things that are actually harming their relationships, convincing a generation of women that they're better off, all of them better off with no kids, no family, no legacy, no marriage, no relationship, convincing a generation of women to wait for a decade plus for a man that's not going to be there on the other side is evil. It's evil. Be mindful of allowing influencers to influence you towards unnecessary emotional, relational, spiritual, and psychological pain. Unnecessary pain, unnecessary loneliness, and unnecessary isolation. Nothing is worse than something you've given a third of your life to and nearly all of your adulthood to, i.e., my field, mental health field. Nothing's worse than seeing that being taken and manipulated and tarnished at the hands of people that could care less about actually helping people and could care less about the actual mental health field. So those are my 10 things. Please share this with those that you think are still stuck worshiping and idolizing these types of individuals. I just want y'all to be careful. So, relatedly, we'll be doing an appearance soon and within the next week. And my hope is that I'm going to get an interview in with someone that's very, very close to this topic in terms of exposing one of these individuals, these trending influencers who may not actually be a psychologist, although they've marketed themselves as such, and what that might mean both for them as individually, for our field, and how to really reevaluate this whole influencing podcasting thing, how the audience can just get a lot better and how to identify these types of people. So those are my 10 ways of being able to identify pawns and grifters, particularly female ones. And I hope it was helpful. So I'm not going to hold you all any longer. Thank you for watching and tuning in for this episode 7. And stay tuned for many, many more things to come. And thank y'all for your time. Genuinely. I appreciate the love, the support, and the patience as I try to continue to put these thought out, carefully crafted individual concepts and content together. Thank y'all. It genuinely means a lot to know whether you agree or disagree that you actually spent the time to just listen. So be careful, be smarter, and enjoy your time. God's son out. Peace.